Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the PBSC podcast. Mark and Steve here coming at you with episode 252, if you can believe it. Pretty wild. We're now on the brink, by the way, before we get into episode 252. We are just on the verge of 1 million subscribers. In fact, or 1 million downloads. In fact, by the time that this podcast airs, we probably will have hit it. So I just wanted to tell you in advance, thank you so much for all your patronage. We love you guys.
Yeah, awesome.
Fabulous. Absolutely. Well, the episode 252 is going to be a little bit different. For a long, long time, we have been answering quite a bit of. It's been like a lot of Q&A with our episodes for probably the better part of the last year. The holiday season is kind of a unique time in the therapy world because this is where sometimes things will slow down in terms of questions that people ask. You know, they're busy with holiday activities or fall break with their kids or whatever the case is, which kind of opens up the opportunity for us that we don't get a lot here on the podcast, which is to tackle a session or a topic of our choosing, which we don't do a whole ton. And as Mark and I were talking about it, we thought that there would be, as you can see by the title, we wanted to continue off of something that we've mentioned a little bit here on the podcast that we've been tackling and shifting and making big strides in with our Dare to Connect program, which is a huge emphasis on empowerment and taking charge. And that applies in a lot of different ways, and to both addicts and partners as we apply it to our Dare to Connect program for addict spouses and couples. But we did specifically, as we look back on our recent episodes, the last 3 or 4, we haven't spoken really directly to the partners in a while. And so we really wanted to talk about empowerment from the perspective of a partner, because we know that partners find themselves in a place of disempowerment for a lot of reasons and in a lot of different ways in this process. And so, as you can see, the title is As a Betrayed Partner, How Do I Live, quote unquote, Empowered, regardless of what my addict partner does or does not do. So we wanted to talk about that today.
Yeah. And this, recently we've added some additional formality to this, what we call it the Dare to Connect or D2C culture of empowerment, where we're really trying to help both the addicts in recovery, the partners in healing, and the couples in our D2C program really start to develop this set of skills, this mindset of what it means to live an empowered life. And we've talked with our D2C people in a lot of detail about how we're rarely raised as we grow up in our, as kids and teens and young adults, we're rarely raised in environments where we were taught how to live in empowerment. Usually it was how to be put into a victim role, or, how we as addicts, how to go stoic or silent, or go to anger and rage, or all the various ways that we learn to get our needs met, most of which were not healthy, and most of which were the opposite of empowerment. They were disempowered because they relied on what another person did or did not do for me to then feel peace or to be happy or to, whatever, fill in the blank. And we're especially, Steve and I, passionate about this concept of empowerment for betrayed partners, both because of what we know that we put our own partners through for decades and all that they dealt with. Because of that, we have a special place in our hearts for them, and all the many betrayed partners we've worked with for, over 20 years in our professional practices. We really do have a heartfelt place for all of you partners who deal with something you didn't cause, you didn't deserve, you didn't anticipate in many cases, you can't fix, this whole unfair, ridiculous, outrageous scenario. And we see so many partners who legitimately become stuck or trapped or just feel like they can't do anything or go anywhere because of all of this. And we just have a huge passion, Steve and I, with helping betrayed partners to step into their empowerment. something we just feel so strongly about.
Yes. Well, and we've talked about kind of popular culture or the
Mm,
way that the culture works generally speaking as in other areas of this recovery process. And I think this empowerment piece is so critical for a lot of reasons, but one is because it does challenge, I think, that status quo that too many of us are sort of raised in different ways, right? Both from our family of origin, but even just in the overall culture that we live in. As I look at, for example, American culture, when you look at TV, when you look at popular movies, when you look at, people who are in the spotlight, whether they're celebrities or whatever, we embody a culture in too many ways, not just in the States, but in other areas of the world, where the way that I would say we engage with the world is far too reactionary,
mm.
far
Yeah,
more than it ought to be, meaning that we're kind of looking right to the people or the things or the world around us to determine for us how we are going to respond in a given situation, right? We look to, again, celebrities for, well, what's their take or what's their view on this? We look to our neighbors to say, well, are they going to treat me nice? Because depending on if they're going to treat me nice, that determines if I'm going to treat them nice, right?
right.
Right. And you can see it kind of on every level of our culture. This reactive play style plays out in the background, I think, more than we realize, where we are all far more than we ought to be looking to quote unquote cues in the environment for how I'm going to show up, right, in any given thing. And this is a particularly problematic for partners because, we addicts, it's no secret. We do create a really, what would be the way to say it, a really isolated venue for finding your authentic voice. Being married or being attached or having being in a committed relationship with an addict in active addiction means putting up with a lot of gaslighting, a lot of victimization, a lot of distorted thinking, half truths, half measures, uh, lack of commitment. The list just goes on and on and on. And I think many partners, because of the instability, because of the uh, unsure footing that they find themselves in that relationship, and because of all that other background that we talk about from other areas and sources, find themselves adapting to a very reactive lifestyle in order to survive in the relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we, Steve, you and I talk about all the time the blaring contradiction that we know is very difficult to hear. And you and I've even talked about sometimes we have the difficulty saying it.
Yeah.
That a betrayed partner, the betrayed partner of a sex and porn addict, that she can learn how to quote own her side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
And we know just the phraseology of that. You're like, whoa, whoa, hold, what do you mean my side of the street? I didn't do any of this. I'm not the betrayer. Right. I've been faithful and loyal and done all the things I should. And now you're telling me that I have a side of the street. And we know that when you hear that on the surface, it seems to be a blaring contradiction. But as it comes to this place of empowerment, it really is essential for you as betrayed partners to start to learn how you can, in fact, step into your own empowerment, control your own destiny, take hold of your own lives. And we feel very powerfully, very passionately about that.
Yeah.
And and it becomes doubly difficult when you find yourselves in a variety of situations. And we know that all of you are in different places with regard to this empowerment. Some of you are engaged with addict partners that aren't pursuing recovery at all, and all the stuff that comes along with that. Some of you have partners who are maybe half in, half out. They do sort of well in some areas and not in others. They relapse. They have slips. You think things are good, and then the whole thing caves in again, right? Waiting for the other shoe to drop, all of that. Some of you partners even have addict partners who are maybe serious about recovery. Maybe they're making good progress. Maybe they're really committed to that whole thing. But you as a betrayed partner, perhaps you're feeling, quote, like you're lagging behind. And of course, that lagging behind is very much a misnomer, but it's very common for betrayed partners to feel, wow, my partner's really progressing, but I feel like I'm not progressing, or all the attention is on him, and what about me? Or I'm starting, we're a year into this and I'm starting to have feelings for the first time that I never had before. I'm starting to find a part of my voice that I've never spoken before. Shouldn't this have happened a lot earlier? Shouldn't I be a lot farther down the road on this? So we know that there are some of you who feel that way as well. So lots of different places you might find yourselves. And from where you're sitting, whatever situation that is, you're thinking, how in the world am I supposed to grab hold of this empowerment thing?
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that we're going to talk about this multiple times as we go through this. I think that one of the big barriers for a lot of partners, I know this was the case for Brittany, my wife, when we were going through this process, she had a lot of resistance to in this area, and understandably so, because in our line of work we call it the sense or the fallacy of fairness, right?
Yes.
It's this logical, and it's a very logical conclusion. He caused this. He needs to fix it,
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
right? He
Yeah.
caused it. He got us here. He took the actions or inactions that he took. This is his job to fix. And part of and that's critical. And breaking that down into what it actually is versus what should be is I think a critical first step in this process, because this empowerment I think really starts to take off when we break the link between causation and responsibility for change.
Mm-hmm.
Because in most of our minds, that fallacy of fairness says, well, hey, whoever caused it needs to fix it. But as all of you know, if you've listened to our podcast for any amount of time, that runs contrary to what we know in terms of truth about how trauma works. Many, any, I can be traumatized from virtually any source in the environment, right? Uh, Coworkers, uh, car accidents, physical trauma, emotional trauma, whatever it is, trauma can come from all sorts of places. But the healing, whether it's physical or emotional or otherwise, is always an internally generated process, which is
Yeah.
bass backwards,
It
right?
is.
It
Yeah.
is, but it's the
And
truth, right? Whether it's a car accident and my body has to heal afterwards, or whether it's my spouse betraying me in some way, there is no way, there is no untrauma button. There is no way for the guy who T-boned you with the car to unbreak your leg. There is no way for the addict partner who has lied to you and gaslit you, or whatever the case has been, to unlie to you, to
Mhm.
ungaslight you. He can make changes and needs to make making changes, and that's his side of the street, which we talk about on here all the time. So see all of our other podcasts for that. But in terms of the openness to the healing and actually doing that internal healing work, you partners are the only ones that can.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we want to go today.
And years ago, we had a partner who's doing amazing work, and she shared the analogy with us of a drunk driver. She said, I realized I was kind of like I'm driving down the street doing what I'm supposed to, minding my own business. And this drunk driver crosses the median and smashes into me head on. Next thing I know, I'm in a hospital bed in traction with all these hoses and wires hooked up to me. And I'm so livid and angry at him because he irresponsibly drank and crossed the median and smashed into my car and destroyed my life. And here I sit. And she said, I found myself just in the anger that I shouldn't have to do anything. He did this. He needs to come into this hospital room and fix me.
Yeah.
She said, suddenly it occurred to me like, wow, I can just lay here and do that, which is legitimate, by the way. Or I'm going to decide if I'm going to take charge of my own rehab and my own physical therapy and getting out of this bed and learning to walk again. And she described how that was a real eye opener for her. Really
Yeah.
hard to come to that place. But she realized she said, I had to take back my power, my side of the street, what I could do, because I was
Yes.
tired of laying there. Yeah.
Each of you partners, wherever you are, and we know all of your stories are unique, but the passion for this is hopefully evident from Mark and myself, and the reason why, even though we know that this is a hard conversation to have with anyone, be it our D2C subscribers or with all of you, for all the reasons Mark already outlined, the reason why we continue to have it is because I don't know a better way to put it. You're just too good to be stuck.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
deserve better than to be in a prison of his making or even your own making,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the minute we go to that place of I can't change until he does, or they do, or this does, we're stuck.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
stuck.
and
And like Mark said, that may even be a justified position because it's not fair.
absolutely it's justified.
Right, but we don't, but again, that's why we're trying to love you all in a way that says we're trying to help you to look beyond the justified and to look at not, again, not what you're responsible for in terms of what you've caused,
Mm-mm.
but to have an eye open to a discussion today about what can only you change or fix.
Well, and that kind of brings us to the places. What does it mean to live in empowerment?
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we first talk about what it doesn't mean. And what it doesn't mean for all of you betrayed partners to live in empowered lives, it doesn't mean that your addict's behavior, your addict partner's behaviors have in any way, and I mean any way, been your fault. You didn't cause this. You don't deserve it. You're not responsible to fix it, and you cannot fix it.
Yeah.
Living empowered from your side of the street doesn't justify him in any way, shape, or form. We want to make that very clear. Too many people think when you talk about someone owning their side of the street, it somehow releases him of all the stuff he's done and being responsible and accountable for it, and it does not. Hey, everybody, PBSC podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
And, along those lines, Steve and I feel very passionate about the fact that and I'm going to say all of a betrayed partner's feelings, no matter what they are, they're legitimate.
Yeah.
And they must be heard, acknowledged, validated, and addressed, period. And if an addict partner is not, and often is not, the safe space to do that, we're going to talk in a few minutes what are the safe spaces for a partner to have that. And in all this, everyone, the addict partner absolutely must face and own and actively pursue his side of the street. So we're in no way saying in this culture of empowerment, because we're trying to help betrayed partners step into their power, that releases the addict partner from any of the things that we're talking about. He has his whole side of the street, which is quite significant. And we address that in a lot of other podcasts. So we just want to make it clear that what empowerment is not.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about what empowerment is.
Yeah, no, well, and I'm glad that Mark said that because it is important that you all know, and we want to make that as clear as possible, that simply because we're talking today about you taking control of the things that you can control, again, it does not mean that somehow you are responsible for those things to some sort of degree, nor does it mean that, and every situation is different, but that doesn't automatically mean that you played a role in getting you here,
No.
right?
Nope.
We're simply just talking about how can we take where you are and get you in a place where you can facilitate change absent what he does or doesn't do,
Right.
right? So that you're not having to roll with that. So when it comes to this empowerment piece, we have been hitting this very heavily in Dare to Connect. It's a huge tenet of what we do in the Dare to Connect program. And recently we actually did a kind of a training on this, and we opened that training with the following quote that probably is a great segue into how we view this concept of empowerment, um, as Mark and Steve. Here at Dare to Connect, our goal is to help you claim your right. Okay, there's that word right, and power to create and collaborate in your own change, growth, and serenity. That for us is that definition of you being empowered, you taking on the active roles in the ways in which you can to facilitate your own change, your own growth, finding your own peace, and not finding yourself, quote unquote, waiting on anyone else, be it your partner or otherwise, because these concepts, by the way, don't apply to just your marriage or your committed partnership. These apply to any relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. This concept goes far beyond just how do I not get stuck in this process of recovery. This is how do I get unstuck in relationships in general.
Yeah.
So, so
Workplace, family, friends, neighbors,
yes,
doesn't matter. Any relationships.
absolutely, absolutely. So there are a couple of pieces to that, right? There are, I guess you could call them essential elements, right? That a betrayed partner would need in order to move into consistently living in a place of empowerment. Okay, some things that we have to kind of line up and concepts to talk about so that you all can walk away from this discussion today in that place of facilitating change as much as possible. Mark, you want to cover
Yeah,
that
yeah.
first
So
one?
let's talk about this. So, one of the very first things that's absolutely essential is that each of you betrayed partners have a healthy, safe, supportive space to express your full feelings, whatever those are, and why you're feeling those things, what's under them. Now, this support, at least for a good while, is nearly never going to be your addict partner,
Mhm.
right? The one who has caused the damage, betrayed you, all the things that go along with that. For him to provide that safe, healing, supportive space, as I said, at least for a good while, is not going to happen. And so you need to find that supportive, safe and healthy space outside of that relationship in many ways. So you're looking at things like a support group, a therapist, a trusted, safe family member or friend. And I enunciate trusted and safe family member and friend. And our Dare to Connect program, for example, we have as our top priority providing a safe and supportive and healthy space for betrayed partners. But you've got to have, because you cannot do this solo. You
Yes,
cannot go this alone. It's too much. It's too big. It's too heavy.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and this actually came up in our session this morning with the addicts in kind of a different lens. When we are caught in toxified or unhealthy or distorted thinking in some way, whatever that way may be, and we try to resolve that thinking utilizing ourself as the resource, you can see why that would be a problem, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
We're trying to use our own, I've heard the term in 12-step groups before, is quote unquote stinking thinking, right? We're trying to utilize that paradigm as a way to somehow exit that paradigm. And that just inevitably, results in very diminished returns.
Well, and it's not reasonable for somebody like the, betrayed partners listening who have been through such crazy, outrageous trauma to expect that from that traumatized place, a brain that's literally been rewired and changed, that you could in trauma be able to figure all of this out in healthy, effective ways. It's just not reasonable to have that expectation of you at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and as we kind of go down this list, so that's kind of first up is making sure that you've got the right resources that you're turning to and reaching out to the right people. The next piece is developing out, and this is kind of an ongoing journey that we all have to take, but developing out these concepts of responsibility and accountability. Now, if you've followed Mark or myself for any amount of time on the podcast or in Dare to Connect, you'll hear how Mark originally, and we kind of have adopted that now as a group, hyphenated these concept of responsibility and accountability. In other words, how do I turn those two concepts from static nouns into verbs, right? Into action words. Like how do we actually put those into practice? And probably the best way to say it is this. The reality is that we as people, be it as a partner, be it as an addict, be it whoever, we cannot change what we cannot own.
Mm.
There is a door that unlocks when we take the stance of what is my next right thing, and we look for that in whatever situation we find ourselves in. When we aren't looking for the next right thing, we fall into that too often. We fall into that place of, again, looking for the cues from the other person. What are they doing? What are they not doing? And then we choose how we're going to respond from that. Now, it is true that when it comes to boundaries, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute, how we hold boundaries and the outcomes attached to them do oftentimes come about as a reflection of that. But in terms of the overall direction that we take, we cannot afford to look to any one situation and say, hey, situation or environment or person, tell me how to respond here. Right? It always falls to us, regardless of the activation level of our partner or their readiness to change or openness, for us to be able to say at any given time, what is within my control here? What can I change? What can I facilitate? Uh, Taking that attitude of refusing to be pigeonholed into a victim role means that we recognize at any given time what are my options and whatever they may be, and we recognizing the fact that in any situation I always always have choices.
Mm.
Now, sometimes, because I know that's a hard thing to hear, Mark and I have worked with a lot of clients over the years, and we've had this dialogue of, Steve, are there really always choices? And the conclusion we have arrived at is yes, we do. Oftentimes, when people say, well, I don't have any options, what that really means is I don't have any options that are comfortable or ideal. And that's the reality, right? Because depending on your partner's level of involvement or activation or how proactive they are in recovery, some of the options of how you engage in the relationship may not be optimal, right? We work with many spouses where tragically, when the addict, for example, is doing very little, if at all, and given time frames and a lot of other things on the line, sometimes the only actions are I might need to distance myself even further in this relationship, up through and including possibly terminating it.
Yeah.
But even that in of itself is there are always choices, right? We cannot ever afford to adopt the mentality of somehow, some way, I have to wait on this person to do this before I can start getting healthy or I can start finding peace and serenity. That is always something that any of us can pursue at any given time.
Yeah. And when you start, as we work with betrayed partners and they start to realize, wow, I am actually a sovereign, independent, amazing being with the ability to dictate my life, my future, my path forward. I am in the driver's seat of me. And a big part of that, as part of this empowerment process, is each of you as betrayed partners becoming very clear and very specific about your authentic wants and needs in both your individual life and in this relationship. What are you needing and wanting that is authentic to you? And then learning the skills to express those wants and needs in healthy ways. Right, because we said as we're raised and as we grow up in different environments, sometimes we're in tune with what we want to need, but the ability to make it be very clear and specific and make sure it's authentic, and then to express it in a way that's healthy as opposed to a way that's reactive or toxic. Very important to get clear on those wants and needs, because what's going to happen from those authentic wants and needs that you each identify and clearly state, you're now going to build specific boundaries around those wants and needs. And what are boundaries designed to do? Not to control another person. Boundaries are designed to build a protection around your wants and needs, your authenticity. and to then create that fence of protection so that those things don't become violated.
Yeah.
And Steve, you can talk for a second about what always has to go along with boundaries, right? Which is
Which is
so hard.
their attached outcomes, right?
Yeah.
We've done many podcasts on boundaries and outcomes in the past, and this is something that we really go in depth with on our Dare to Connect program. So we'd love to have you come join us and grab the 2 week trial so we can tell you more about that there because it is a huge, whole, long, in depth discussion. But
Mm-hmm.
but the outcomes that we hold or the expectations or the boundaries that we set, the outcomes attached to those, I should say, are can be positive or negative, right? Frankly, depending on what the engagement from the other person is,
Yeah.
right? Going back to those choices that we talked about before, when an addict partner is making choices to re-engage, to establish trust, to create safety, that oftentimes opens the door for a partner when they look at their authentic self to be able to say, I can possibly begin to start trusting, or maybe I can start dialoguing, or maybe I can cultivate some hope with this, right? But likewise, the opposite is true if based on the other things that he is doing. And again, those actions are not either rewarding or punitive, quote unquote. What they are is they're simply reflective of where this person is going. I, as a partner, need someone who is trustworthy, someone I can connect with, someone that I can collaborate with, someone I can share a life with. I want you to be that person. But if you're not willing or not able to be that person, I likewise may need to do something different, right? And that's what those outcomes are going to be designed to be to be reflected on if we use that as an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now there is kind of another piece or the next piece to this, I guess I should say. A betrayed partner that's living in their empowerment does not in any way release the addict from any level of responsibility and accountability. Okay. We'll say that again just for kind of emphasis. A betrayed partner who's living in their empowerment does not in any way release the addict from any level of responsibility and accountability. In fact, it actually places those things more on his shoulders and it's strictly on his side of the street. We
Yes.
are still holding him to account, right? And saying you need to make changes in order for us to be able to connect better, in order for this relationship to be brought in harmony with what my needs are or the needs of the relationship are. So we're not saying in any way that we're taking that responsibility away. What we're saying is that in the meantime, while I'm looking to you to do that or not, and I'm going to use my boundaries to determine how much I connect and collaborate with you, regardless of what you choose to do when it comes to the me side of this street, I'm making my changes regardless. I am going to become the best, most authentic, most transparent, most healed version of me. And as we have said to partners before, and this can be scary for addicts to hear, hopefully for this marriage, but if needed for the next one,
Yeah.
because I'm not waiting around. I am getting better now, today. I'm going to find healing today. And hopefully you'll elect to join me on that train. Mazel tov if you do. But my life is too important. My needs are too critical. The needs of our kids, etc. We are not waiting. We hope that you'll join us in this. We're inviting you to, but we are moving forward. I am moving forward regardless.
Yeah. My wife, she expressed it more or less in this way. She said, my empowerment, happiness, peace, fulfillment, having a great life train is leaving the station. And I hope that you will get on it, or I'll even try to keep the speed of that train reasonable so that if you decide to catch up and jump on the train later, but that train will get to the place where there'll be no chance for you to get on the train.
Yeah,
The train's leaving the station. I want more than anything in the world, with the exception of my own authenticity, my own sovereign life. I want anything more in the world than you to get on this train. Please join us on the train that's leaving the station. But she made it clear in no uncertain terms it was leaving the station because she was
yeah,
moving forward. Yeah, hard for addicts to hear that, but very important that it puts us in a place to choose and decide, what do I want?
for sure.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, guys, we're getting close to wrapping up here, but we do have a few things left to cover. So as we kind of move on, whatever an addict chooses to do, whether they choose to that recovery piece and to grow and to heal with you or not, It does not control whether or not you can or will live an empowered life. Okay.
Yeah.
That is the main thing that we hope that each of you partners take out of this. And frankly, for those rare cases where maybe the positions are juxtafied, meaning, or juxtapositioned, should say, meaning that the addict finds themselves as the one kind of leading out and a partner is unwilling or not in that place to do their healing, then these things kind of reverse. But each of you listening to this call, whoever you are too valuable. Your life is too valuable. Life is too short. Therapy's too expensive. You can make whatever colloquials you want around this idea that the time for change is today. There's no need to continue to wait to find that healing for you. And again, that extends not just in this relationship, because if you find yourself stuck in this area in this relationship, give pause for a minute and think about when, what other ways may you have done that. Mark and I are both a couple of heavily recovered, but highly formerly codependent addicts. And we were not just stuck in this with our partnerships. We've been stuck in this with jobs, professions, colleagues, all sorts of different relationships over time. And we choose to live a different way now. You can find that empowerment. You can take that back today. It all begins with that process of taking that time to self-assess and say, what is within my control here? Not what did I cause? Okay, that's where the language has to shift.
Yeah.
Not what did I cause? I mean, there's relevance to that as far as the healing part goes, but in terms of actual change, the question is, what is within my purview, my sphere of influence? That is what, and where can I facilitate change? The minute we start letting go of that quote unquote fairness and we start to focus on the other pieces, the minute we make that transition from being the wounded to being the proactive force that is acting upon rather than being acted upon.
Yeah. And what you'll discover is you really step into this place of empowerment. You start to realize I'm not basing my life on what he or she does or doesn't do. I'm pursuing my healthiest, most authentic, most amazing self on my path. And what it comes down to is what does this directly impact? It directly impacts whether we as a coupleship can collaborate. Can we be a team? Can we have each other's backs? Are we compatible? I'm pursuing all this for me, my healing, my going forward. And do I have a partner that can be with me together on this, or do I not? But I'm not going to allow their inaction or action to sidetrack me from pursuing my best self and my best life.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thank you for listening today. Thank you, as always, for opening your hearts and your homes to us. We appreciate that as we round this bend on both 1 million downloads, and in a couple of weeks after that, hitting our 5-year anniversary on the podcast. We just couldn't express enough to you our gratitude for all of you, for your patronage, for being here, and for the feedback we get from you. Please, if you have questions that you would like answered on the podcast, please go to pbscpodcast.com. When you go to that page, it will actually take you to our main Dare to Connect website. You'll just need to click on the red banner at the top there, and that will take you to the PBSC site where you can submit the contact form at the bottom to have those questions answered, or to get faster, more in-depth, more engaged response for a program that offers well over 30 hours of content. Let's see, what are we over a month? Live interactive chats, ongoing, ever-growing features, a wealth of information, plus our 2 awesome, entertaining addict and recovery faces insights. Please come join us at Dare to Connect. We are truly revolutionizing the way recovery happens in the sex addiction and sexual compulsion and betrayal trauma fields. If you like what you hear here on the podcast, you will love Dare to Connect. Come check us out and grab the 2-week free trial at daretoconnectnow.com. And with that, we wish you a great rest of the week and look forward to catching you in the next episode.
Yeah, sounds great. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the host and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, or desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.